Hey guys, Bert Kammerer here, and today we're going to continue on with the setup for RotorFlight on the Nexus using Express LRS and EdgeTX with the Radiomaster TX16S. So the logical next step here is to set up the RotorFlight Lua, because the RotorFlight Lua allows you to make changes to your RotorFlight configuration from within the transmitter. So when you're at the flying field, if you want to adjust your PIDs or your rates or anything else, your head speeds, governor settings, you can simply land, disarm the helicopter, go to the Lua, make the change, rearm, and go fly. So we need to install that. Also, in order to use the advanced telemetry features, you also need the Lua, and we're going to get to that here in a minute. But let's start by installing the Lua first. You're going to go to this URL, and I'm going to put this in the description. Once you get here, this is the RotorFlight Lua scripts. All you have to do right here is click on code and click on download zip. That'll download the zip file to your computer, and it'll place it right here in the downloads directory or whatever your computer is set up to put downloads in. So I'm gonna decompress the zip file right here, and I'll end up with all these files. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open another Finder window, because I'm using Mac. Obviously, you could use any other device, Windows or whatever you have. I'm going to open another window here, and I'm going to use this window to navigate inside the radio. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my transmitter here. I'm going to power it on.
Welcome to EdgeTX.
And I'm going to plug it into the computer right here on the USB-C port that's on top of the transmitter. Remember, the one that's at the bottom is only for charging. Once I do that, I'm going to get this dialog on the screen with these options. I'm going to go to USB storage. Right here, I should have the transmitter coming up on my computer at any moment. There it goes, no name. So this is my transmitter and the SD card inside the transmitter. I'm going to look for the SRC or source folder and the scripts folder inside there. And I'm going to take all these folders inside the scripts folder, and I'm going to copy them. And I'm going to go back to the transmitter SD card, go to the scripts folder, and then I'm going to paste those into this folder. So Control V or Command V for Mac. This will take a little time, so I'm going to go ahead and fast forward the video, and then we'll continue on. Okay, and now that that is complete, we're going to go back to our transmitter, unplug it, and we're going to go to sys, and now we're going to see the RotorFlight 2 Lua on the screen. We're going to click on that, and it's going to be compiling the scripts necessary to install the Lua on your transmitter. And there it goes. So the best way to test this is we're going to go ahead and plug in my helicopter. I don't need to hook it up to RotorFlight. Just make sure the transmitter is up and running. Plug in the flight pack. So now my helicopter is connected. The flight pack is connected, and I have a connection to it. So now if I go to the sys menu and I click on RotorFlight 2, it should connect me to the helicopter. And as you can see here, I can see my status. The pit profile I'm in profile 1. Remember, profiles are here, so I can go here. It'll change to 2. And you have all kinds of options right here. I'm not going to get into detail here because this video would take forever. But here you can adjust, for example, your rates, similar to what you see in the RotorFlight configurator. Here you can adjust, make changes to your profile PIDs, other options within the profile system, rescue if you have that enabled, your governor, your servos, mixer, filters. Again, this is just the governor for each profile, and this is the main governor setting right here, which, as you can recall, I have it set to pass through. And then you have all kinds of other stuff. And while we're here, I'm going to show you a pretty neat trick. If you go to settings, there's ESC programming ability through your transmitter. I have a Hobbywing Platinum V5, so I'm going to change this from hide to show. Also, the model on TX is actually a really cool feature to enable as well. I'm going to show you that later, but I'm changing that to show. If you have Scorpion or YGE or Flyrotor ESCs, you can enable that for your particular ESC, and then you can do the programming for your ESC within the Lua, which is really cool. Now, one thing important to mention here is when you make a change, you have to hold and then save the page. If you don't do that, it will not update. And that applies to making, for example, changes to your rates or your profiles. If you ever come in here and you make a change, you have got to hold it and then save the setting. If not, the setting literally goes away, as you can see right here. Just goes away. Anyhow, now that I enabled the ESC, I can go here to ESC, and there it goes, Platinum. It says it's a V5. See, the flight mode is governor store, which again, I'm using the governor that's built into the hobby wing. The rotation I can change. I can change my BEC voltage. The cell count is auto. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff in here that you can change from within this Lua. It's really, really cool. Basically, the same features that you can change if you have the latest version of V-Control, you can change with this Lua right here if you have a hobby wing ESC. So in order to work with telemetry, we need to go back into RotorFlight configurator. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to unplug my flight pack from the helicopter, and I'm going to plug the Nexus into RotorFlight configurator and launch configurator. Here we go. So once we get to RotorFlight, we're going to go to the receiver section right here. And as I explained to you before, you probably have telemetry enabled right here, and you have all these telemetry sensors going as well. And this works okay, but the amount of data you get is really not as good as if you were to enable CRSF custom telemetry. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and enable CRSF custom telemetry. But before we go there, we got to make sure that the telemetry rate and the ratio are matching what you have on your Express LRS configuration in the transmitter using the Lua for Express LRS. So we're going to go ahead and go over to the transmitter right here, and we're going to click on SYS system. We're going to go to the Express LRS Lua, and as you can see here, my packet rate is 333 Hertz. Yes, it's not as fast as using 500 or 1000. I know that very well, but this is my Tron Advanced 7.0. I haven't even yet flown this on this setup. I always like to start with 333 and work my way up from there. There's no need to, but that's what I like to do. For telemetry ratio, I recommend you use at least 1/32. I think the default is something like, I don't know, I don't remember, but whatever it is, change it to 1/32. And once you're saved, you exit that, you go back to RotorFlight, and again, telemetry rate is 333, and right here I'm going to enter 32. And then you start picking telemetry sensors that you'd like to have. So I want battery voltage, I also want battery current, battery consumption, battery charge level, battery cell count, why not? And of course battery cell voltage, which will show me individual voltages per cell instead of the total voltage for the whole pack. I like to get my BEC voltage. I like to get my ESC temperature, and I also want to get my head speed. Why not? I need to know what my head speed is. And I don't know, just because I can, I'm gonna also do my tail speed. And remember, RotorFlight knows these settings because we already told it what the main rotor ratio and tail rotor ratios are, so it'll know exactly how to render these numbers on the transmitter if you choose to display them on the transmitter. If you don't, you just have the data there, but you don't necessarily have to use it. Now, you can get really creative with this and use, I mean, there's so many different options here, but I think this is more than sufficient, more than I get with most other systems, and it'll be available for me to display on my transmitter screen. So I'm just going to save and reboot, and then we're going to go to the transmitter again. But first, we need to go ahead and plug in our helicopter. And before you do, please remove your main and your tail blades. This is important because we're going to go ahead and spool up. We're going to look at the different telemetry settings. We're going to read sensors for telemetry with the radio, and then we're going to set up our home screens. Okay, my helicopter is now plugged in, my flight pack. And one thing that we have to do in order for CRSF telemetry to work is we have to go to the model setup right here, and then scroll down to enable features, we have to turn on custom scripts. So change that from whatever it says. It could be in global or off. Change it to on. And then once you've done that, you go to back again to the model screen and you go right there. And that is your custom scripts. So you're going to click on that, edit, and then the script is going to be RF2TLM, and that should be the script you have there after you install that Lua. And then we're just going to call this TELEM for telemetry. And once that's done, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the very last option here, and that's our telemetry. And we're going to click on Discover New. And as you can see, it's going to start populating all these options right here for all the telemetry. Okay, so for example, VBAT is the voltage on our flight pack battery. So if you click on that and edit, you can change the name. So let's say I want to call this volt or volts, doesn't matter. Okay, let's see what else. This makes it easier for me to identify certain things. This is the temperature on the ESC. This is the capacity that we've used, a battery percentage. See, this is, sometimes you'll find two of these and you have to kind of be careful, because when you go set up your screen to display telemetry, you got to make sure you pick the right one. And this happens when there is telemetry that is inherent to RotorFlight and telemetry that comes from the custom CRSF telemetry feature. So we just got to make sure which one is which. So if I spool up, so if I arm, I have no blades on my machine, and I spool up, I'm going to just observe these values right here. Okay, so for sure I know that volt, which I renamed, is the actual voltage of the battery. That's my tail speed. That's my ESC temperature. That's the capacity I'm using, but see, there's two. So the second one, number 19, is the actual capacity I'm using. And then battery percentage is how much I have left on the battery. Number of cells, the current I'm using right now. So once you have this information, then you can go ahead and start making your own custom screen on your transmitter. So that's the next thing we're going to do. Okay, before I start adding stuff to the screen, I want to change this background. I really don't like this. It's too cluttered for all the data that I want to put in there. So what I'm going to do in order to do that is I'm going to go to the system screen, and I'm going to go over there, and I'm just going to find a theme that works better for what I want. I really like RCVR USA. That's RC Video Reviews. That's designed by John Hopke. If you haven't checked out his channel on YouTube, it's RC Video Reviews. He has a ton of videos about RotorFlight and Nexus and Express LRS and EdgeTX. I'm going to use that theme. I like that. I have to hold it. Set active. And it's red. So if you want to change that, you can always go in there and click on edit. And then you can just change the color. So anything, for example, that is red, from red to blue, for example, just go in there and change that to blue and find some kind of blue color that I'm not a fan of. Red is not my color, but I don't care if it's a warning or whatever it is. I'm doing this very quickly just to kind of demonstrate, but that's more or less what I'm doing right here. As you can see now, I have a less cluttered design. Another thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to this key right here, and that takes me to the main view for my screens. As you can see, I only have one screen. You can add multiple screens if you wish, but I want to have a screen that has, for example, 4 grids on the left side and 2 on the right. Okay, so I'm going to do 2 and 4. Let me see if I can find 2 and 4. 4 plus 2, there you go. And I like that configuration because on the right hand side I'll have more room up top than below, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with that. I'm going to use a widget that is actually going to show me my battery percentage, and I'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, I leave the top bar alone. I don't want to know my flight mode. I don't want to see sliders. I don't care about trims. I don't want any of these options to show. So I'm good with that. So then I click on set up widgets. And each one of these boxes allows me to set up a different widget, right? So let's say that I want to show RPM right here. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to select value. And the source is going to be my head speed, right? So you can scroll all the way down forever, or you can just click on that, and that takes you to all your telemetry options right there. Sorry, right, the one there. So I'm going to go to head speed, and it's going to be way down there. Let's see. Head speed. Now, as you can see here, that's my head speed. This is the minimum head speed negative or minus sign. Head speed plus sign is the maximum head speed. So if you want to know what was the maximum head speed you had during a flight, you would select that, and when you land, you can look at it and you know what was the highest head speed. It's very useful if you have troubleshooting governor issues, or if you're doing overspeeds just because you enjoy it, you want to know what was the highest head speed during your flight. So head speed plus is what I'm going to use. And then for the color, I'm just going to probably do like a black because it's easier to see. Save that. And then I don't really need a shadow. And that's it. So now that's going to show the maximum head speed. So now I can go to widget settings, and instead of head speed plus, I want head speed, just like that, and it's 0. And now watch, if I again arm and spool up, now it's going to start the head speed. So you can continue to do that throughout your screen and find the best layout that you would prefer. And yeah, that's how it works. So I'm gonna go ahead and start populating these off camera, and then I'm gonna show you what I ended up with. So basically I ended up with head speed, the voltage on my BEC, the current, and the temperature of the ESC. And I don't like those names. Obviously you don't have to change these things. To exit the screen, just click this button right here and that exits. But I don't really like those names. I don't know. Call me weird or anal, but I'm just gonna rename some of those things. So for example, for the BEC voltage, I want just to say BEC. I don't want it to say VBEC. I want it to say just BEC capitalized. So I'm gonna do that, and now in the home screen I should be able to see BEC. Okay, and then for current, I'm gonna change that to amp. For TESC, I'm just going to change that to temp. And there it goes. Head speed, BEC voltage, amperage, and then the temperature of the ESC. And again, if I spool up, you're going to see RPMs, the current I'm pulling, and you can see how the temperature is going up. Okay. So now I have a couple of spaces, right? A couple of sections right here that are empty. And right here I want my model name. Now, one of the beauties of RotorFlight is that you can use one model on your transmitter to fly every single helicopter you own, as long as they're electric and you don't require anything significantly special for one particular machine. So I only use one model file, and that model file is called electric. That's it. So if I try to add the name to the helicopter, what it's going to do is it's just simply going to show me the name electric. But instead of showing electric, what I want to do is I want to pull the data from RotorFlight under the configuration section. Whatever name I gave that helicopter, I want that name to show up right here on the screen. And for that, we need to download a widget. And if you can remember before, when I showed you under the RotorFlight Lua and settings to show the model on TX, that's what that's for. So I'm going to show you how to do that. You also are going to have to go to model on TX and set the name here to on. Okay. And then again, remember to hold that, save page, update, exit. So I'm going to show you how to add that model name to your transmitter. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to this website right here. and I'm going to show the URL. I'm going to give you the URL to this website in the description to this video. So what you can do here is you can take this script. This was written by Offer Shmuley. I hope I'm not mispronouncing his name. You can simply like click here and download this file, right? And the file name is main.lua. So then after you do that, you're going to navigate to your transmitter SD card. You're going to go to the widgets directory and you're going to create a directory called model name, okay? And you're going to put that main.lua file inside that directory. Once you're done with that, unplug your transmitter, go back to your transmitter's main screen, go to model menu again, go to special functions, and we're going to create another special function. This one will be SF2. And for the trigger, we're going to set it to on. Easiest way to find that is click on that icon and set it to on. And then for the function, we're going to set Lua script. Right there. And then for the value, we're going to use the only option we have, which is RF2BG. This is a special script that comes as part of the RotorFlight Lua script we installed at the beginning of this video. And this will be running in the background to allow us the ability to display the model name on the transmitter. So make sure repeat is on and enabled. And then that's really all we have to do there. And then once that's done, we're going to go ahead and plug in our flight pack into the helicopter. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here to the widgets section, set widgets, and now when I add a widget, I should be able to see model name. And I'm going to change the color to black. And that's it. As you can see, every time I plug in a helicopter, my transmitter is going to display the name of that model that is configured under the configuration section and the RotorFlight configurator for that particular fiberless unit that you're flying on that machine. So next time I plug in my Goblin Pro, it'll say Goblin Pro. So that's a really cool feature. Okay, one last thing I want to show you is a very, very cool widget. This widget was written by Bob from Canada. If you ever go to the IRCHA Jamboree, Bob is almost always there. So make sure to say thanks to Bob. Bob wrote this widget that works as a power bar, okay? And you can read up on it. Again, I'm going to put this URL in the video description, but he has different widgets right here. He has the power bar, which shows you the percentage of battery that you have. It shows you how many milliamps you've used, shows you your voltage per cell. It has the ability to auto detect the cell count. It's pretty cool. He also has other widgets like the eThrottle, which is really good to tell you if you're in safe or arm mode, and all kinds of goodies right here. So check it out. I'm going to go ahead and download it. And once it's downloaded, I'm going to go to my downloads folder. I'm going to decompress or extract that zip file. And I'm going to go ahead and put the contents of sounds and widgets into my transmitter's SD card. So as we did before, I'm going to copy the sounds and widgets directories to my cart right here, and it's going to warn me that there's already a sounds and a widgets directory. I'm not going to hit overwrite, because if I do that, if I replace, I'm going to basically wipe out the contents of those. So I'm just going to click on merge, and it's basically going to take the contents of whatever is inside here and inside here, and it's going to place it inside here and inside here. So, and now it's done. So now I'm going to go ahead and go back to my transmitter, and I'm going to click on this key right here to go back to the screen setup under main view number 1, which is screen number 1, setup widgets. Now I'm back here. Now I'm going to click on this, and now you're going to find the widget that we installed, ePowerbar. Okay. Now this is where it gets tricky. The volt sensor. Now my helicopter is turned off, so I'm not being able to see the sensors. But if I go here to telemetry, the volt sensor is going to be volt, because as you can recall, I renamed that to volt. And I like renaming sensors because it makes things easier to find. So volt. Okay, the percent sensor is going to be battery percent, but as you can recall, there's two, because one is inherent to RotorFlight and one comes from the CRSF advanced telemetry. So I'm going to find the second one here, is bat percent. Okay, there's one right here, the negative and the positive, or minus and plus. There should be another one. There, bat percent. And then the mAh or milliamp sensor is going to be kappa. And again, as you can remember, we had two kappas here. So I want to make sure I go to the lower one, because as we confirmed during my quick spool up test, the second CAPA or second kappa, there's one right there. The second one is the one that's providing the correct value right there. Okay? And then here you set your reserve. So for me, I like 30%. I know it's a little much for some people, but I do like 30%. So what that means is when it gets to 30%, it's going to alert me, warn me, and I still have 30% left on the pack. So when this starts to alert me, I still have a little bit of time to land, and I don't feel like I have to rush into an immediate landing. And then the number of cells, you should set this to whatever cells you have on your helicopter. I leave it at 0 for auto detect, but I have to be honest, auto detect doesn't work 100% of the time. I like it in auto detect because I use the same model file from my transmitter to fly my Tronavans, my Il Goblin, and also 6S helicopters like the Tron Dynamic and so forth. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to power on my helicopter. I'm going to leave this here in case I need to mess with it. And I'm going to go ahead and plug in my flight pack on the helicopter. Now my flight pack is connected to the helicopter, and as you can see, I'm going to exit this and get out of the screen. Here we go. So now you can see the power bar showing green. When it goes down to 10% above the set threshold that you selected, it turns yellow. And then when you get to the threshold you selected, in this case 30%, will go red. I can see that I have this voltage. Now you got to be careful because this is not a 100% fully charged pack. It's at 49.8. So you got to be careful. If the battery's not fully charged, it'll still show you 100% because it starts counting from the moment you plug in and going down. So this is not useful if you do say a 1-minute flight, land, plug back in. This only works for the one flight. So your battery's fully charged, you plug it in, you fly, and this 100% will start to go down. And then it'll show you way down here the milliamp capacity that you've consumed out of the battery. And as you can see here, it shows 4.15 volts, and it knows it's a 12S pack, so the auto detect worked. So as you spool up the helicopter, again, we have now our RPM, our BEC voltage, we have our current from the ESC. I changed that to RPM. I like RPM better. I just renamed it in the sensor screen. BEC voltage, the amperage that I'm pulling, obviously no blades, no tail blades, so it's pulling only 10 to 12, 13 amps. And then the ESC temperature, and as you can see here, my percentage of battery utilization is going down, and it's showing me how many milliamps I've used. So far I've used almost 100 milliamps. And again, as this goes down, based on these settings, on this 30%, it'll alert you. Super cool. Some of the best telemetry I've ever seen in any system. It'll also do call outs with voice based on your milliamp consumption and much, much more. Up next, I'm going to show you some other things that you can do if you prefer not to install any widgets. If you don't want to use the widgets and you just want to go straight to just setting something up to where you get the voltage, the percentage, and the milliamps used, then remember what our sensors were, right? We had the volt, and then the battery percent, and then the capacity. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go back to this screen. We're going to set up a second screen. This is the plus sign at main view. And let's say that we just want to do, like, for just demonstration purposes, we want to do like a 4 and 4 or something like that. No, it's just 2 and 4. It looks like a 4 and 4 to me. set up widgets. Okay, I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna go back to value, and in the source I'm gonna go to telemetry and I'm gonna find volt. So this will show me my battery voltage right there. Then the color is gonna be black, and then I'm gonna go to the next one and I'm gonna go also to value, and in this case I want to show, for example, the battery percentage. And again, remember, bat percent is the second one because the first one did not show the true percentage. There we go. And then I'm going to change it to black, and I'm just going to keep populating options here. Say I wanted to show the voltage per cell. Again, go back to value and then go back here, go to telemetry, and then somewhere in here I'm going to find the voltage per cell. Change it to black. And let's say that I want to know here what the capacity is that I used. Same deal here, back to telemetry. And this is going to be kappa. Remember, it's the second one. Right there. Again, go back to black. And say I want to keep going. I want to do my RPM right here. And I want to know what my BC voltage is. Or actually, you know what? Let's do the tail speed, because that's kind of cool to have. It's not needed, but why not? We have it, so might as well show it. Tail speed. And then right here, I'm just going to do my BEC voltage. And let's do one last thing here. What can we do? Let's try to do ESC temperature. Now we have all these fields populated right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that screen and I'm going to remove the flight mode because I don't need to know it. The sliders, we don't use sliders, and helicopters really. Trims, we don't use trims. Yeah, we don't use any of that stuff. So just remove all that stuff. And then now my second screen looks like this. So you don't really need a widget to show you the stuff you want to see. We know the battery voltage is 49.6. Battery's at 100% based on the fact that we just plugged in. So this starts at 100% regardless of the voltage. Keep that in mind. Then we have the volts per cell, the capacity we've used. We have the RPM of the rotor head, the tail, the RPM of the tail, and then the BEC voltage, and then the ESC temperature. And again, you can rename any of these sensors. So if I want to rename, for example, the tail speed sensor, and I just want to call it tail, I just go into edit. And I change this name here and I just call it tail, and that's all I really need to do. Now it says tail. We're going to test this and see if it works. There you have your voltage. Our battery percent is going to start dropping. Voltage per cell is going to start dropping. Milliamp is going to increase, and again we can change that kappa to MAH. We want to. Our RPM, our tail speed, our BEC voltage, and our ESC temperature. Now why not? Let's change the second kappa. Remember, actually I should have done that in the very beginning, because remember there's two kappas right here. So we want to go ahead and rename the second one, and it'll be much easier to identify it. And we're going to call this M capital A H, so that's the milliamp consumption that we've used on the battery. And now you can see MAH, and that'll carry through everything. So if you go to widget settings here, see how it changed to MAH. So it's really cool, and that works. Now, because you don't have a widget, you don't have an alarm, you don't have voice call outs, I'm going to show you how to set up haptic feedback based on your actual milliamp consumption instead of using the actual widget from Bob or any other widget. So if you don't want to install the widget, you really don't have to. So if you don't have a widget and you want to be alerted when you reach a certain percentage of battery, then all you have to do is you have to create a logical switch. So you go to that icon right there, and we're going to create a logical switch, L01, and the function on that logical switch is going to be A is less than, right there, X, okay? And for the V1, we're going to go to the battery percentage in our telemetry, and as you can recall, it's not the first option on my transmitter, it's the second one. So that's the first one right there. So we're going to go to the next one, battery percent, and then the value number 2 is 30%. Okay, that means when A is less than 30%, and we're going to do a conditional statement, and this switch right here, which is my throttle hold, the SG switch is down, but I want that inverted. So what I want to basically do is when the switch is in any position other than throttle hold, and you can see that exclamation point, that means any condition other than that switch being all the way towards me. Okay, when that switch is in any position other than that, and the battery percentage is less than 30%, then this logical switch is going to become active. And in order to make the haptic feedback work, you have to go to your special functions, add another special function, and then the trigger on this one is going to be the actual logical switch. So we need to find that logical switch 01, and then in here, instead of overwrite, is going to be haptic, and then the value, we can make this 1, and then the repeat, we can just make this like 2 seconds and enable that. Now when our battery percent drops below 30%, as shown in this logical switch, regardless of any widgets or anything, we're going to get some haptic feedback. So I'm going to do a quick test to show you how this works. So what we're going to do is I'm going to change this from this logical switch from 30% for a test to 95%. Okay, so what that means is when the battery percentage drops below 95%, let's make it even 96%, then I will get some haptic feedback. Right now we're at 98%, so let's see what happens. We're at 98%, we're at 97%, 96%. So when it gets to 95%, because I said when it's under that value, so when it's under 96%, it'll start vibrating. And there it goes. And you probably can hear it, but if I move it to the microphone, you can see how the radio is vibrating. Of course, I need to change this back here under my logical switches from 96% back to 30%. Okay, before we wrap this up, you might be wondering why our screen 1 shows the actual background of the theme, and our second screen here does not. Is because the background is enabled under here. You can see panel 1 background, panel 2 background. So I'm going to turn that off. So you can see on the screen number 1, those are not an option because of the way of the layout, but because the layout here is 4 plus 2, meaning 4 and 4, for some reason I'm getting that option here. So I just removed the panel 1 and panel 2 background, and now screen 2 is going to show the actual background of the theme, which I prefer. Then on top of that, you can create as many screens as you like. This is really cool about this transmitter. I have a screen with my timer and things that I don't use often, and I have my main screen with the stuff I use all the time. Another thing that you should know is that if you click on this option right here, that is your top bar. So you can start customizing your top bar if you wish. So for example, if you want to know your transmitter voltage, you select the widget, you go to value, And then all the transmitter options are under here. So BAT would be the transmitter voltage. I want to leave the color white. And then, for example, if I wanted to know what was the maximum head speed I had during a flight, like I go to RPM plus. You can see the maximum was 1786 on that previous pull up we did. And then let's say you want to see the maximum amperage current that you pulled on that particular flight. And you're going to go to the telemetry again, and you're going to find the amp, because remember that's what we renamed that to. So it should come up under amp, and we're going to go to amp plus. Right there, amp plus. So that will be the maximum amps we pulled. And you can keep doing this for as many options as you'd like to have. This is a super cool system. The top bar is only adjustable globally. In other words, as you change screens, the top bar does not change. So I hope this video was useful in teaching you the ins and outs of Luas, especially the RotorFlight Lua for the EdgeTX Radiomaster TX16S, as well as, of course, how to set up telemetry. I feel like at this point, if you followed my video series, you should have been able to set up your transmitter model, you should have been able to set up your first helicopter, and you should have been able to set up your telemetry, and everything should be working perfectly. There's other things you can do. There's black box logging and many other things. I don't know that I'm going to get into that, but for sure I'm going to do a future episode talking about advanced PID tuning as well as advanced filter options. So again, I hope you enjoyed it, and please don't forget, click that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.